It was a sunny afternoon in a quiet suburban neighborhood where everything seemed picture-perfect: manicured lawns, colorful flower beds, and children playing in the driveways. Beneath the well-kept facade, however, tensions simmered, fueled by differing opinions and political divides. Among the residents was Martha Gaines, an outspoken office worker who prided herself on keeping her neighborhood free of anything she deemed unwelcome. Driving home after a particularly rough day at work, Martha spotted something that instantly set her on edge. There, in her neighbor Henry Davis's front yard, stood a bright red "Future for All" sign. The sight of it made her blood boil. To her, the sign was an eyesore, a symbol of division that had no place in her pristine neighborhood. She muttered under her breath, frustration growing with each passing second. "This doesn't belong here. Not in my neighborhood," she fumed. Without a second thought, Martha parked her car, marched across the street, and ripped the sign from Henry's lawn, tearing it to pieces before tossing it into her own trash can. Little did she know, her impulsive actions would soon come back to haunt her in ways she could never have imagined. Martha Gaines was known in the neighborhood for her outspoken nature and her tendency to involve herself in other people's business. She considered herself the de facto moral compass of the community, always ready to correct what she believed was wrong. Whether it was reporting a neighbor's car parked slightly over the curb or complaining about late-night barbecues, Martha often found herself at the center of minor neighborhood controversies. Her relentless desire to enforce her version of right and wrong often left her isolated, with few genuine friendships in the area. Henry Davis, on the other hand, was a well-liked figure in the neighborhood. In his early 40s, Henry was a successful real estate investor who owned several properties in the area, including the house that Martha rented. He was known for his generosity, often helping neighbors with home repairs and organizing community events to bring everyone together. Though he held conservative views, including his support for the Future for All movement, Henry rarely spoke about politics. He believed in peaceful coexistence and respecting the diverse opinions of his neighbors. That was why he never anticipated any issues when he put up his Future for All sign. To Martha, Henry was just another conservative neighbor whose beliefs she felt compelled to challenge. She had always prided herself on taking action, and the sight of Henry's sign had pushed her past her breaking point. After parking her car in her driveway, she took a deep breath, feeling her frustration grow. The anger bubbled within her until it reached a boil she could no longer ignore. She had to do something, and she had to do it now. With grim determination, Martha marched across the street to Henry's front yard, her heart pounding with each step. She didn't care who might be watching. All she could think about was removing that symbol from her line of sight, ensuring no one else in the neighborhood had to endure it. Without hesitation, she grabbed the sign, her fingers wrapping around the metal stake as she ripped it out of the ground. The metal made a soft scraping noise as it came free from the earth, and Martha felt a surge of satisfaction. It was as if she were physically removing a problem. But she didn't stop there. Her fury propelled her forward. She tore the sign into pieces, her hands moving with purpose, leaving no room for second thoughts. Each rip of the material felt cathartic, each piece falling away like a weight lifting from her shoulders. She needed to erase the statement it made, to destroy the message she found so offensive. Once she had reduced the sign to nothing but scraps, she carried the remnants back to her trash can, her heart still pounding, now from a mixture of adrenaline and exhilaration. As she threw the pieces into the bin, she felt a fleeting sense of triumph, as if she had accomplished something important, something meaningful. Returning to her house, Martha took a moment to catch her breath. She poured herself a generous glass of wine, feeling the tension slowly begin to dissipate. She needed to share this moment with someone who would understand, someone who would appreciate what she had done. Picking up her phone, she called her best friend, eager to share her latest stand against what she viewed as intolerance. "You should have seen it," Martha said, her voice a mix of excitement and righteousness. "I ripped that stupid sign right out of the yard. This neighborhood doesn't need that kind of hate." Her friend, who was used to Martha's theatrics, responded with a cautious, "Are you sure that was a good idea, Martha?" There was hesitation in her voice, a hint of concern. But Martha brushed it off, confident she had done the right thing. She replied, "It had to be done. I won't let that kind of message be displayed here. Not in my neighborhood." Meanwhile, Henry returned home from work later that evening, exhausted but content. He parked his truck in his driveway and made his way up to his front door. He paused for a moment, a strange feeling washing over him. Something was off. It took him a moment to realize what it was. His yard looked different. He squinted at the patch of grass where he had placed his future for all sign that morning. It was gone. A frown crossed his face as he approached the spot, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of what had happened. The metal stake was missing, and there was no trace of the sign anywhere. Henry felt a pang of disappointment. He didn't like confrontations, and he had hoped his neighbors would respect his right to express his political views, just as he respected theirs. Glancing around, his eyes narrowed slightly as he noticed Martha's trash sitting conspicuously at the edge of her driveway. Something about it caught his attention, the way it was slightly ajar, as if something had been hastily thrown inside. Walking over, he lifted the lid just enough to peek inside. There, among the household trash, were the torn pieces of his sign. Henry sighed, more disappointed than angry. He knew exactly who was responsible, and while he had hoped to avoid conflict, this was something he couldn't let slide. The next day, Henry decided it was time to confront Martha. He wasn't looking for a fight. He just wanted an explanation, an acknowledgement that what she had done was wrong. Walking across the street, phone in hand, he queued up the footage from his security camera and knocked on her door. When Martha answered, her expression immediately hardened upon seeing Henry. "Good evening, Martha," Henry began, keeping his tone calm. "I noticed my sign was damaged yesterday. I was hoping you could help me understand why." He held up his phone, showing her the footage of her ripping the sign out of his yard. Martha's face flushed, but she refused to back down. "That sign spreads hate," she snapped, her voice dripping with disdain. "I won't have it in this neighborhood. It doesn't belong here." Crossing her arms, her body language was defensive, as if daring him to argue. Henry took a deep breath, trying to keep his frustration in check. "Martha, you destroyed my property. That's not acceptable. I'm asking you to replace the sign. We may not agree on everything, but I have a right to express my views just as much as anyone else." His voice remained steady, but there was a firmness to his words that made it clear he wasn't going to let this go easily. As the days unfolded, tensions grew, and Martha was forced to confront the far-reaching consequences of her impulsive actions. This story of conflict turned into one of accountability and redemption as Martha faced her mistakes and worked toward reconciliation with Henry and her community. Through humility and understanding, she learned the importance of respect and coexistence in a diverse world.